I just got sent your new song,
Oh yeah,
which I was just listening to.
yeah.
It's great, obviously, because it's the research.
Timeless, right?
Yeah, yeah, it was a cracker, a banger, as they say. Uh,
Thanks.
but you know when you play a song on your computer on your iTunes and then it runs on to the next song, I I rip quite a lot of audio because of the podcast, just kind of
Right.
old adverts and clips from chat shows and all this sort of stuff. So it rolled over without me knowing that it had done that. So I was like, "Oh, this is a tune," and then it started getting really weird, and I was like, "Oh, that's a strange coda to the end of this song,"
Mm.
and it was actually the theme tune of whatever the quiz show was that had Dusty Bin on it from the 80s. Uh, so there was your song, and then it kind of went, "Brr, brr, 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 brr," and I was like, "Oh, that's a clever thing they've done." And then realised it wasn't you at all. It was actually the
Well,
Dusty Bin music.
thanks for accrediting us with intelligence, even though it was on you.
Yeah, yeah. Or also, are you aware of the mid noughties journalist Tim Johns?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
One of our first NME things was with Tim, I
Yeah.
think.
Well,
Yeah, I think he reviewed our album.
well, this is it. You see, so he.
I said Jones, like Spike Jones at the time. Was it Johns? Did we say Johns?
Yeah, yeah. Well, he's not. I might get this totally wrong, but I'm sure his name is actually Jones. But at some point, he decided to call himself Tim Johns,
Yeah,
as a lot of us were fond of doing in that time, having kind of pseudonyms and stuff. So,
yeah.
but yeah. So it pretty much was in the noughties. It pretty much was me and him trying to make the research the biggest band in the world, which
Ah,
obviously we succeeded at. And so I was talking when I heard you were making music again, I messaged him immediately, and we had some nostalgia about conversations we had with our superiors at the New Musical Express when
mm.
we were like pitching features and such like. And I do, I do always remember. Please take this the right way, because you know it's coming from a place of real love, right? Like
Yeah.
we both loved your band, but I do always remember someone who ran the live section of the magazine, who I think had entrusted Tim with running the live section while this person was on holiday, and he came back and there was a massive research review in there, and he described it as a little bit like letting Tim take his dog for a walk and his dog coming back dead.
Oh, the other the live editor
Yeah,
described it. Oh,
yeah,
okay, right. I see. What, all right, okay.
yeah. It
Well,
was being a research fan in the enemy office in the noise it felt like going off to Nam or something.
I don't like dogs dying very much.
No, who does, mate? Who does?
Yeah.
Who does?
No, although the first band that we ever supported was called Dogs Die in Hot Cars.
Oh
That's
yeah,
just popped in my head.
yeah.
I remember
What's
them. I remember them. They were
Going
aw-
off subject.
they were aw-
Indeed, yeah.
they were awkward, weren't they? I think that's how you would describe that music.
Back to Tim taking over the live editorial thing. In that very piece, I remember he declared that he wanted to marry Sarah. I think. I think he said he wanted to do something else with Georgia that wasn't quite as pure.
Oh God, is this like that? What's that? No, I was going to swear. Then I can't swear.
Right. Well, firstly, you can swear.
He didn't. He
I was
didn't want
gonna
me
say,
anywhere
like,
near the
Is
band.
it like that game, the marry, snog, avoid, or whatever it is?
Firstly,
Maybe.
you're encouraged to swear as much as you want to. Secondly, I would like to quantify that they were different times.
You're
And
not allowed to say stuff like that anymore. People get offended.
yeah, and thirdly,
I don't mind marriage proposals, but yes, thirdly.
it might be a bit much by a print, but thirdly, Tim is one of the most decent people I've ever met in the music industry, of which it's a small pool. So I feel like I need to defend him in that regard. But the point being is that when I heard that you were back, I was so my wife, she manages Emily Sanday.
Oh
And
yeah.
she was
Oh.
on she was on the phone to the co-manager, and they were having quite a serious conversation about, serious music business stuff. And I came through to the living room and I was like, "Oh my God, you won't believe it. The best thing ever has happened." And she stopped the phone call. I was like, the researcher back. And she sort of looked at me like, "Oh, that's nice." And I was like, "No, you don't understand, the researcher back." So it was quite an event yesterday, at least in my house and in the DMs of Tim Johns' Twitter account.
That's nice. Nice to hear. I'm struggling where to balance things in the sense of like, playing for the nostalgia of it all, or making it like relevant now to things. And I mean, what would you prefer?
Well, I think that, looking at you all now in this sort of blankety blank kind of setup that we've got on Zoom, firstly, you don't look like you've aged a day.
You have to say that.
No,
I've put that soft focus thing on my Zoom call.
Is that what it is? a bit of Vaseline over the lens.
It does hide, yeah.
No, but I don't know. I guess that like with your music, like I don't know. Listen to that new tune. It could have just fallen off the first album. It doesn't look. It doesn't sound like. I don't know, that you've got authentic. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't sound like that thing when bands sort of get 20 years in or something and everything becomes very serious.
Well, we tried that on the second album.
Well, I wasn't
didn't go so well. So
I wasn't gonna say.
So we just got daft again.
Why now though? Why are you back?
Yeah, it was genuinely like serendipitous in various ways, I guess. I would have thought on most occasions, if you'd asked me if I would reform the research, in fact, like people have joked with me about it in the past, and I've said absolutely not doing it ever, 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 for no amount of money, for no occasion. And then I saw Georgia at a wedding, and we chatted, and I joked, even at the wedding, I joked. I don't know if Georgia remembers because she was drunk. I turned up late and was not. But I joked about how I thought like lockdown would have been a great time to reunite, because we couldn't have actually got back together. We could have just done something, online, and it would have been entertaining for people. Everyone was trying to entertain people during lockdown. They'd accept any form of entertainment, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
So that kind of
that you started writing some songs and you thought that they were researched.
No, it wasn't so much that. It was just like I'd got a lot of songs that could have been research songs. Back to the Real World being one of them. That was I'd written that like a couple of years ago, and I didn't intend it to be a research song. But then when this chance came up, I thought, oh, that'd be really cool. Anyway. So that planted the seed, I guess, talking to Georgia at this wedding. And then Dean contacted me from Long Division Festival. And I've always loved Long Division. I love what it stands for. I love the fact it's in Wakefield, supporting local arts and people. And I was aware that he'd announced it was the last one and felt sad about that. And then when he asked me what the chances of reuniting for the last one were, I said yes. I said I'll think about it, but when you say you think about something, you already know the answer. You already know what you're going to say.
Chance in hell. I was like, "There's no way Russell will do it again."
Yeah.
I would always think about it like was it the Eagles who had the When Hell Freezes Over tour?
That's us.
But it's become like a bit of a trend for bands getting back together, isn't it? It's like Busted.
Yeah,
Busted are touring again.
It's exactly like Busted. This situation is exactly like Busted. But I'm going to come back to you being back in a second. But I guess what I'm interested in is, I guess the research for a band that I'm not. It kind of took you not being around for me to realise how much I missed you, if that makes sense. Like.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Yeah, like as soon as I heard you were back, I was like, oh my God, I love this band so much. But it's kind of weird because when you were around, it was just a blink of an eye, really. You were like this sort of cult indie pop band that people who have good taste in music liked, but not enough people did, if that makes sense. Like, where did you all go? What did you do?
It's funny, the kind of timeline of it all, because it was a big part of our lives. I can speak for myself. Assume it was a big part of our lives. It was a career for a bit, and yeah, it was really brief. And I've joined other bands on temporary bases and been in them a lot longer than I was ever in the research. You know, so.
I think at the time it was quite intense, so it felt like we were doing it for longer than we actually did, because we were just like, we were doing back-to-back tours at some points. And so we were, to me it felt like we did it for ages and ages.
Well, and when you think that we'd met when we were 20 or something, and we did it until we were older, it actually it did feel longer because we'd known each other a long time, and it in some ways it happened very quickly, and we know that we were lucky, or certainly I feel like we were very lucky to get a record deal and have the opportunity to go and tour. But but yeah, at the same time, I'm aware of that. There was that hard slog. There was the sort of trying to get gigs and get attention, and we were helped and supported and everything. But it did feel like it was longer to us, I suppose. But I don't know where the last few years have gone though. The strange thing was that when we got back in the room a few weeks ago to start rehearsing, it felt like it was no time at all. It was as though we were just back in the rehearsals.
Well, I
guess like we were in the old days.
I guess that kind of begs the question: when you called time on it, did you call time on it with all of you in a good place with each other?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, like I mean, we had full house. I can see Georgia screwing her face up. We had full house afterwards, but at the time, I think it just came to a fairly natural end. I think we just kind of ran out of road.
Yeah, and I always would sort of term it that you kind of get cabin fever a bit, of being in a tour bus, and we never got to the dizzy heights of having huge tour buses with sleepers and sleeper space and living rooms. It wasn't like we could really separate from each other. And I think even though Georgia and I always managed to, we always got along and we were fine, even sharing hotel rooms, it was just so intense for, long periods of time of being right next to each other in a small bus. And then sometimes the three of us in a travel lodge room together. And, you just sort of couldn't escape. And, everybody grows up and changes, and life on the road is not for everyone. And so I think over time you kind of get the stresses and strains of that. And, you sort of start thinking, do we need to think about different directions here?
What did you all do in the intervening years?
Go Russell.
Well, various little jobs, gaining skills. I mean, one main thing is we all started families, which turns out to be quite time consuming. And I've been playing with other bands, doing a lot of writing, just because I can't not do that. It's just fun, isn't it?
You do it or you don't do it,
Yeah. I can't really describe it. Just living,
right,
day in, day out, keeping it real.
I just think that's interesting when you were saying, when you said to people, there's no way I would do that again. But at the same time, it seems like it's not like some bands where you've got to do some work in order to do it again. And also, it seems like there was part of you that missed it.
I didn't think there was. Having started doing it again, writing for it again has been really refreshing. I didn't realize how kind of carefree the writing process was for it. I think when you've not done something for so long, the reflection of it is very different to how you felt at the time, you know.
And it's nice having purpose for it as well, isn't there? You know, so often I would pick up the drumsticks and I'd be trying to play some songs, and then I'd just be thinking, oh, what am I doing this for? I mean, I did do some drumming in the interim, but I think having, you know, songwriting for a purpose, I would think
I like that.
helps.
Yeah, I'm a massive fan of the band Biss. You know the band Biss?
Yeah.
They're like my favourite band probably, and they. I always kind of find that band really interesting because they almost kind of, you know, they were like a indie pop band from Glasgow that kind of had. They kind of ended up having a pop career almost by accident, really, and the kind of music they made, that was surprising because they sort of should have been just this underground kind of lo-fi cult thing, and then they ended up on top of the pops. And I think in lots of ways that kind of maybe that changed them, because then you start thinking, well, how can I make this a career? How can we maintain this? And they had an awful experience with the music press and the music industry. They had some really shitty things happen to them, but they came back a couple of years ago, and you know, they've all got families now, and like some of them run businesses and some of them have got side hustles. And you know, whenever I talk to them, they're always like, this is kind of how it always should have been, really, is that we don't have to think about how this is you know, they can appreciate it in a way that they didn't do the first time round. Does it feel a little bit like that already?
I mean, we haven't technically done anything yet, but yeah, I guess so.
Now it's a bit easier to do the DIY, isn't it? Because of social media, which we didn't have before. It's easier to get the word out and release stuff yourself. Maybe, is it?
Well, I don't know.
I never, clear of it. Yeah, but I never really know about that, really, because I sometimes think that, you know, in so many ways it's so easy to make connections with people, and you know, you almost, a lot of the gatekeepers have been removed because you can literally do it yourself in ways that were difficult in the past. But I sometimes wonder as well, like, I don't know, say this was, you know, I'm not very good at maths, but say this was 15 years ago and the research announced that you were coming back, which would be weird because you haven't gone away yet, but bear with me. Like, me and Tim Johns would have demanded that there was 2 pages about you and the enemy. Do you know what I mean? We would have been like, there has to be 2 pages about the research being back. And I guess now in this kind of like sea of noise, there isn't really that anymore. You know, there aren't really those institutions that focus you on news.
Yeah, it's a different sport, really, isn't it? Like, yeah, like I don't do social media.
People don't go and buy a magazine like they used to, do they? So they can just get it all online.
Well,
so.
Yeah, and I think the difference nowadays is that whatever your interests are, you can focus yourself and go down a complete rabbit hole of information and, you know, consuming stuff that is of interest to you, and completely neglect anything else that maybe you would happen upon or that you might be interested in but didn't know through a publication. You know, for instance, the NME, I would read that every week and I would be introduced to new bands, whereas because of the nature of algorithms and the internet, I get stuff churned at me that the internet thinks I'm interested in or that I already know about. So I feel like people are a bit more blinkered nowadays. They go down the paths that they're interested in, and then they're not exposed to new stuff unless they go looking for it, which some people do. But there aren't those publications and platforms that, or even Top of the Pops, you know, to just watch that and be like, oh, who's that new band? I've never heard of them.
I mean, other than the noncery, Top of the Pops is very missed.
Yeah.
I mean, it obviously seemed to be a sort of a front for all sorts of criminal activity, but God, I miss that show every week.
I miss it, and there was there were different ways to play it, weren't there? You know, this is the legendary Nirvana performance on there. Like, you even though it wasn't a legitimate kind of authentic plug in your guitars and play a live song show, you could, you know, it was quite fun watching the challenge of bands expressing themselves in a unique way.
Absolutely.
you know, within the confines of the top of the pop rules. I really enjoyed it.
I think when I was asking the question what we've been up to in the last however many years, one of the reasons I was asking was because you started following me on Instagram yesterday, Sarah, and your Instagram is fascinating and makes it look like you have a very full and wholesome life.
Wholesome. Wow, that's
I was
nice.
kind of, I was fishing for more really.
Oh,
What's your Kickstarter about?
oh, my Kickstarter. Okay, so kind of since the research, I went into the film industry. I decided I wanted to be a screenwriter, and I went and did a master's degree in that because I didn't really know what the hell that was all about. And then just got really lucky in that one of the first screenplays I wrote got sold and is hopefully being filmed this year. And I've got lots of other screenwriting projects on the go. I also ended up producing a film just because a friend made me, dared me, made me, which called Justine, which came out in 2020. And because of trying producing and loving screenwriting and being on film sets and watching other people, I decided that I wanted to try directing. So yeah, I've just launched this Kickstarter page to see if we can raise some money to direct my first short, because I just want to give it a go. But again, it was the same friend that made me produce a film that he wrote. He sadly passed away, and the last thing that he did before he died was give me this short film and say, "You have to go and direct this. I think you need to go and be a director." So Jeff
no,
Murphy is his name.
No pressure, mate.
No, I know, yeah, but he was like that for me. Jeff was a real champion, and he liked to push me and sort of say, feel the fear and do it anyway.
If I ever find out that I'm on my way, if I ever find that I'm on the way out, I'm going to just start ordering people to do things as well. I think I might.
Yeah.
I think I might demand the Doncaster Rovers football team win the league, and
Yeah.
really kind of guilt them into doing what I would like to happen.
Yeah.
Who's the Doncaster? They have a celebrity footballer, don't they? Who was in like a boy band? Was it like One Direction or something?
Louis Tomlinson, yeah.
Is he a bona fide pro Doncaster footballer?
Well, no.
Or is it all a bit of a media trick?
It was a bit of a media trick, but he's for real though. He used to sell burgers down there. I distinctly remember him selling me a burger. Yeah, when he was a kid and when I was younger. He's for real. There was a weird period where him and the ex-chairman tried to buy the club by basically kind of auctioning all sorts of kind of signed One Direction merch, which I felt a little bit uncomfortable with, if I'm being honest with you. I felt ethically I would maybe have preferred a Saudi oil baron. What did you do in the interim, Georgina?
Well, I started a family like the same as Russell and Sarah. Got married, got 2 little boys. I've been mainly teaching, so I now teach singing vocals at Leeds Arts Uni.
Oh, all right, nice.
So shout out to the students. They're all quite excited about the research returning, because obviously it's what they're sort of aspiring to do, is playing bands and get signed and do that. So
you were like a cool teacher?
Well, I don't know if I'd go that far, but it does give a bit of credibility if you've kind of done it. You've done it. I can tell them some rock and roll stories from the tours.
Can I just interject it, because it's a great time. I've not spoken to Georgia in a lot of years, and when I go to send her an email, I found out I've got 2 email addresses that come up. One of them is your current one.
Don't say it. Don't say it.
Do you remember back in the days when people got their first email accounts and tried to come up with something with like personalities?
I know what it is, man.
It's so good. It makes me laugh every time. Okay, I can't say it. It's I've got to respect Georgia's wishes. It's a great one though.
Sorry, James.
You can all wonder what it was.
I like your band too much to push. I don't want this reunion to be over before it even begins. No, I've got a couple of friends. I used to be at university in Sunderland, and I've got a couple of friends who are in bands from up there who like achieved things, who did good stuff, and they're both teachers now, and they they expressed to me recently that when they are teaching their pupils and their pupils are getting excited about the fact that their teachers were in bands, there's almost that kind of weird ego conflict that comes from being in a band has emerged again. Whereas if the kids are like, oh, well, so and so, he used to be in this band, and the other guy will be like, yeah, but we were on Top of the Pops. We were like a bigger band than them. So it is kind of weird how that does continue even when you're out of the playground. What's Wakefield like now? I haven't been for years.
I was thinking this a couple of days ago I was writing something about the importance of long division in our lives, and long division is a festival that started like 11 or 12 years ago in Wakefield, set up by a guy who was running a fanzine, and it became like an in the city music festival with local artists, and he started attracting some really big bands to come and play in Wakefield, like the likes of which had not been to Wakefield since the 70s or something. So I was thinking about how Wakefield's changed in the last band. So when we all met in Wakefield, you couldn't really walk down the street with a guitar on your back without getting some heckling from some locals. It wasn't the done thing. It was arty farty or something. Now it feels really kind of culturally vibrant, and it feels like a much happier town. Having said that, I don't like it when like political things are publicized about the way Wakefield votes as a district, but it's I think it's another thing. What social media is weird, like you choose to follow the people you choose to follow, and you feel like you can choose to get all the negativity out of your life without really realizing that that's what you're doing. Man, I've gone off on a tangent. Where am I?
I think, Wakefield. Because when we first started out, we had we were lucky enough to have Escobar, where we used to play quite a lot, and it was really cool. You could just go to Escobar any night of the week, and there'd be
that was kind of the second phase, though, wasn't it?
McDermott's. McDermott's was that first?
Yeah, when we were before that.
Well, you just jogged my memory, because when I was in a band, we played at Escobar, and with that band, do you know the band Pylon?
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. Well, I used to work at Escobar. I worked behind the bar, so I saw a lot of bands.
Right.
I'd totally forgotten that, Sam.
Oh yeah, I made a good cocktail.
I think this was probably early noughties, and I loved Pylon. We did a bunch of gigs with them, and they sort of because we'd done gigs with them, they were like, come and play Wakefield, and I remember thinking that place was just a bit of a diamond in, and I'm saying this from Doncaster, so I'm saying this affectionately, like it felt like an anomaly within Wakefield, if that makes sense. But it's kind of weird that even from being from Doncaster, sometimes I see that guy Youngblood, and I'm always like, Doncaster has changed. He's from Doncaster.
Yeah.
I'm always like, Doncaster has changed, and it has to be for the better, because someone like Youngblood would be dead, like in the Doncaster I grew up in, So it's sometimes frustrating when you actually have that thing when you hear about how people are voting, and you're like, no, actually, your towns and cities have got more diverse and accepting and forward thinking, but actually
it feels like that. Yeah, for sure, it feels like that.
Yeah, it's weird.
And then it's revealed that you've been duped.
Yeah, I think
by your own decisions.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah.
Escobar was interesting because it was one of our friends from university, a musician who you may know of. He goes by the name Napoleon III.
Oh yeah.
he did not like he didn't like gigs in like grubby venues. He was a bit more kind of sophisticated in his tastes.
It was a wine bar.
Yeah, it
put.
It was a wine bar, and he was like,
a trendy wine bar.
I want to put gigs on there in big cities like, I don't know, London. They have gigs in nice places. Why can't we put? So he spoke to the guy in there and arranged the first kind of events to happen in Escobar, and it did. At first, it was a complete anomaly. It was completely alien to everyone that they could go and watch bands through a PA in a venue.
There was that really Cribs gig, wasn't there, where there was, I think there's about 5 people watching and the Cribs played, but they were Ryan used to do that thing where he took all his clothes off and then dived on the floor.
Yeah.
Did like a stage dive, but there was no one to catch him, so he just dived onto the floor.
But it was like a striptease. He'd do it behind his orange amp, and the little light from his orange amp would like glow up his body as he was like naked behind his amp.
I feel like
classic.
I feel like I owe the Cribs an email. It's been too long. What was it about Wakefield though? I mean, was there like a record shop that sold the good stuff? Like, why was there this little clutch of really good bands?
There is now, isn't there? There's Wawa records now.
I've asked myself that question so many times.
Well, I suppose in one obvious way, especially given that you can hear that we've all got southern accents and we were there in Wakefield, there was a music course which was a degree in popular music.
Right.
And kids from, as we were, came from all over the country and the world. Even we had French Fred on our course, and
there was a lot of local musicians as well, wasn't there? And
well, I was going to sort of add to that, but just the fact that there was a popular music course there that was specifically a bunch of people wanting to be musicians in the industry, and that a lot of those people then went on to organise nights, like Chris Shipton did Anonymous Groove in Leeds. And but then, as you say, Georgia, there were already so many local bands, but I just think there was this sort of addition of all of these people coming from all around the country for the purpose of being in bands, creating bands, setting up a community. And there was already one there. And I just think that there was this, perfect, cocktail going on.
It's interesting. Well, I was saying about being up in Sunderland, like Wakefield really reminded me of the situation in Sunderland, in that you had this like kind of quote unquote more culturally sort of notable landmass that was Newcastle, that was nearby, but there was almost that kind of conflict. I wonder whether Wakefield was a bit like that with Leeds, that almost kind of Leeds, I don't know, I sometimes think that like good art comes from adversity in lots of ways, so I actually wonder whether, because Leeds, there was all the venues, there was 3-4 good record shops, I wonder whether Wakefield actually, I don't know, kind of prospered because it was up against it a little bit.
I think I agree, and I think that there is also the fact that those who were local musicians, were sort of trying to, well, in some way, sort of, escape in a way of, having a career and doing something that wasn't what everyone else was doing. But I remember there being this bar where there was this, what do you call it? There was this sort of thing that it said something about how this place, and it was referring to the uni because it was like a uni bar, is like your old clapped out mini that you hate it and you kick it when it doesn't start and you've got to boot it, but the minute anyone says anything against it, you defend it to the death, and I remember sort of having a sense of Wakefield being like that as well, because at the time it felt like it was just really sort of a bit rough and there wasn't much going on, but all of this music was being created and it was the people that were really trying to make the place. And and I think certainly I have always sort of said that it's such an interesting place, and obviously Georgia and Russell still live in that kind of neck of the woods, and Russell in particular should probably be speaking right now because he's been in Wakefield this whole time, but yeah, I do think maybe the adversity is a part of it.
Yeah,
Long Division made a good documentary about what we're talking about.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
All right, I'll hunt that out. When did that?
Yeah, it's by Wayne Sables, and they interview quite a lot of people from the Wakefield music scene. So yeah, basically just this what we're talking about now.
Oh, I'll crack into that.
Why Wakefield? Why is all this music from Wakefield?
What struck me, and this is why I said I've asked myself that same question a lot, is why it was like I always hated the Britpop scene. Could not get into anything that was associated with that scene growing up. Was busy listening to like grunge and kind of art rock from generally American bands. And then when we came to Wakefield, all the kind of local bands, like young kids and stuff, it was like Britpop hadn't ever existed, and all their favorite bands were like Dinosaur Jr. and Sonic Youth and Pavement, and I couldn't explain it, and no one's been able to explain it to me why Wakefield slept through the Britpop years, did not celebrate British music through those god awful years. Sorry if I've upset anyone with that.
No.
But maybe it didn't speak to them. I feel like Wakefield's always been a kind of rock and roll town, and I don't know.
Listen, there was a weird thing in Sunderland when I went from Doncaster to Sunderland. Like, I met these kids who were just obsessed with the Velvet Underground. Like, they just it was like there was one copy of the Velvet's record that they just used to pass around, and that was like where music started and ended. And I just could not work it out. Like, it was almost like they'd bypass Britpop. I mean, this is like late 90s. It's just weird how these things work out, I think.
Yeah. One of my favourite insults that we ever got as a band, leaving the Brudenell Social Club. I still know the girl that said it, and we have this funny catch up every now and then at Cribs shows. And she shouted across the car park at the Brudenell Social Club, "You'll never be as good as the Velvet Underground."
Amazing. Amazing.
What a ridiculous thing to say.
Listen, I love the research, but I really hope that you replied, "Yeah, true."
I do. What can I say to that?
Yeah.
I love the Velvet Underground.
It's almost like a compliment and an insult, that she would, put us in the same sentence.
Sure.
So when can I see you play and shout at you at the end of the gig? You'll never be as good as the Velvet Underground, which I am going to do now.
Only the one time. We've got one gig, one thing in the calendar.
But is there going to be more?
Is there? It's hard to justify there being more.
Why?
I tell you what, James. Oh, sorry, Russell, answer your question, please do.
Just because our situation's like Sarah lives in Wales, basically. Not to put it all on Sarah, but that's kind of inconvenient.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but I do you know what? I'm a freelance screenwriter. I can type from a tour bus.
Right. Okay.
Sarah wants this.
Yeah.
Well, I was
flexible with me.
Georgia, yeah, you've got a lot going on in your life, but I was just going to kind of lay down the gauntlet to you, James, and say that I think ultimately, if we feel like there's an appetite for people.
Have I not told you about me and Tim Johns? It was all we talked about yesterday.
Yeah, no, I have. I'm just saying, we need more than you and Tim at our gigs. So if we know that there's going to be a bunch of people that will show up to some gigs, then we may well agree to do them.
Yeah, there's me, there's Tim. I could probably get my wife along.
You bring Emily Sunday. That would be cool.
I'll ask Emily Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they don't have to be big rooms, do they?
Maybe we could get a support slot with Emily Sunday.
There you go.
Yeah, that's pressure, isn't it? There is.
Just reminding me, someone's got to let Eddie Argos know we're doing this again.
Exactly. There's Eddie.
He knows. Eddie knows.
Does he? Someone did let him.
Yeah. I followed him on the research social media account, and then there was a kind of oh my god.
he is in Berlin though, isn't he?
Yeah. So yeah, we
which
really
means
need
you have to do a German tour.
Are you drinking whiskey, sir?
No. Oh my god, no.
I thought you would. I thought you were drinking whiskey. I thought you were drinking.
Cool.
I thought you were drinking whiskey, and I was thinking that's distinctly unresearched behaviour to be drinking whiskey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and see, now I feel really rubbish for saying I've just got some apple juice.
Well, I interviewed a band this morning this afternoon, early afternoon, who were drinking beer at 1:00, and that did feel a bit.
They were young, weren't they?
They were really young.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're a bit more of 5 p.m. beer.
You can't. I can't even drink beer. I can't drink beer anymore. I feel so bad if I drink these days. I don't know how I'm going to get through a gig.
I said this to my students yesterday. I said, "Oh, they were a bit hungover, and we were doing a big rehearsal for a show." I was out of the luxury of a midweek hangover. I miss those days.
Yeah. Well, the weekend used to start on a Thursday for me, and I'm not even ready for it by like Sunday now. You know, I'm just. Also, you just get to that age as well where you just start going, yeah, it's kind of quite fun being pissed, but like, I'd much rather have a can of Dr. Pepper. Like, alcohol just tastes rubbish, I think, the older you get. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just me. Listen, I don't want to guilt you into this, but if you don't make another record and tour, I'm going to be really fucked off. And
well, at least you didn't say I'll be really fucked up.
No, I will be.
God, I don't want to damage the guy.
No, I will be really fucked up by it if that doesn't happen. So please make that happen.
Sure. Yeah. Well, let's. I'll think about it. We did discuss briefly, like what I think we kind of summarized that festival shows would be good because the upheaval of going away for the weekend isn't so bad. The idea of like back-to-back shows for kind of diminishing benefits,
do a week
all over the place.
a really nice week, that would be all right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not asking you to like give up your jobs or like put your children in orphanages or anything. I mean, it's a different.
We've got 5 boys between us. Like that's a pop band to support us.
Absolutely. Just more songs, just the occasional gig. I'd be happy with that.
Sure. Yeah. The song, like I said, coming back to the writing for the research has genuinely been a lot of fun. Fun day in the studio.
Yeah, I'm excited for Long Division. It's going to be
so excited.
I'm going to take that as a verbal contract anyway, that you've just agreed to be back properly. I think I might come to that show because I can pop in and see my mum and then come to the show afterwards. So that'd be
sounds great.
Yes, please.
It'll be a good day.
We'll buy you a Dr. Pepper afterwards.
Oh, good memory. Thanks so much for speaking to me.
It's like 30 seconds ago.
Yeah, I know, but it's
we are old.
we're all she's drinking whiskey, and we've all benefit of attention, aren't we? Listen, thanks so much for speaking to me. I'm sure I'll cross paths with you again, and I would just like you to remember that you're not as good as the Velvet Underground.
Okay.
Thank you. Good to keep our egos in check.
Take care. See you later. Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Bye, James.
Bye.